Hey guys, good afternoon. Oops, I got a little bit of feedback here. Let's do a Wednesday afternoon tropical tracks. I know when there's a tropical system out there, it gets kind of crazy. I sleep about 3 hours a night, and I guess that speaks for itself right there, right? All right, let's first off remind everybody, if you like the videos, click the like button, subscribe, and hit the notifications because that helps elevate content on the platform, and I think folks that get a chance to watch the content, it's helpful. Let's get right into it. It's 3:35, and we are waiting for the advisory on Tropical Storm Nicole. I guess the question this afternoon is it going to be a hurricane at 4 o'clock, or is it still going to be a tropical storm? There are no Hurricane Hunter planes out there right now, so we're not going to have any real true aircraft observations. We do have some observations going on from the islands right now over there in the northwest Bahamas. The storm made a landfall on Great Abaco late this morning, around 11:55 this morning, as a strong tropical storm, and as of the 1 o'clock update, was still a strong tropical storm. But you can see now from the United States-based radars there, it's really coming into view. You can see the circulation there, and kind of just making it out right there. Now, there is not, at least from this radar point of view, which is a pretty long way because we've got a combination of radars. We've got the one from Miami and also the one from Melbourne that are seeing this. So it's possible that we're not seeing anything over here on the far outside. What happens is the radar beam doesn't curve with the Earth, and then what happens is that the radar beam overshoots the precipitation, the cloud tops over there on the east part of the storm. That's probably going on here, so we don't know if it's a completely closed eye wall still. The Hurricane Hunters earlier said that it was closed. I know that the Bahamian radar also was showing that it's closed. And as this moves west and into view here, we'll probably be able to see that it's what we would think of as a closed eye-like feature. I say eye-like feature because technically the eye is what you see on the satellite, and on the radar, you call it an eye-like feature because it's not on the satellite, it's on the radar. Anyway, once the new advisory comes in, you can see the old one crawling there on the bottom of the screen on the ticker. Once the new advisory comes in, we'll go to that right away. And as I was saying a little bit earlier on Twitter, I do not think that there is anything that's going to be surprising that happens from here on out. There are not going to be any more jumps to the southwest. There's not going to be any more movement to the southwest. It is west or west-northwest until landfall, and then it's probably west-northwest to northwest crossing Florida there. We are not going to see a sudden swing to the southwest. We're not going to see a sudden swing to the northwest. This is all, as I like to say, baked into the cake at this point, what's going on with Nicole. So that being said, let's do a little bit of a radar tour first, and we'll talk about the wind gusts as well, and then we'll wait on the advisory and maybe see if any folks have any questions. Good to see folks checking in from Boca, Orlando. I know we've had folks from Sarasota, Venice, all the way up the coast, St. Augustine and Vero Beach. Good to see we got a big sampling of folks in the Sunshine State, which is kind of the windy, rainy state for today. So let's kind of zoom in here and talk about what we're tracking. And first off, this is and let me zoom out just a little bit there. So that's the track of Nicole there, and kind of if we go back here, we had this northwest motion here, and then a couple nights ago we had that jog to the north, and it kind of brought Spring Hill. Oh wow, Tampa Bay area, nice to see you, and Broward as well. We had that jog to the north, and that brought the tracks up a little bit to the north, and then there was that northwest motion, and then all of a sudden yesterday, boom, it just turned southwest, and it was moving southwest. It kind of then brushed up against that blocking high pressure area that we've been talking about, and when that happened, it caused that southwest motion. And then overnight tonight, we had another little jog. This one was 2 nights ago. This one was last night, and it was a jog to the south. And if you kind of like average it all out, it's really not that big of a deal. I mean, when you look at these things over the ocean, they look like they're making smooth turns. It's only when you're talking about where is it going to impact land does it get a little bit exciting when you have these little jogs, because it shifts the track a little bit, and that means potentially worse weather for some folks and maybe not as bad of weather for other folks. So here's where we are in it now, and you can see the latest position as of the 1 o'clock advisory is right there. Now the question was asked, when do we start getting the hourly position updates? So the National Hurricane Center gives hourly position updates when the eye, or in this case the eye-like feature, is within continuous and reliable radar range of land. So we're getting close. Maybe you could make out a point that the eye is, or almost eye-like feature is getting kind of discernible on the radar there, where we can track it hour by hour, but it may be an hour or two. And it's at that point that we'll get these hourly updates. And the nice thing about the hourly updates, they also contain information about the highest winds, the latest pressure, stuff like that. Once again, hurricane hunters are not in the plane right now. They will be in there a little bit later on this afternoon and this evening, but for the moment there's kind of a pause. We had NOAA aircraft as well as Air Force aircraft in there during the day today sampling the storm. So here's where we are right now. This was the 1 p.m. position right there when it had already made landfall and was continuing to move to the west. And one of the things that I put on here is the interpolated, or the kind of estimated position based on the Hurricane Center's forecast, where it should be right now. And so the center, based on the Hurricane Center's latest advisory, which was the 10 a.m. advisory, should be right about there. And let me mark that point. You can see that little red line kind of coming out. And so right about there, that's where the center should be right about now. So how's it doing? I think it's doing pretty good. You know, if you look, kind of make out the overall circulation there, and let me stop it here for a second. If you make out, there's the eye wall, and then kind of if you say that the circulation is something like that, we're pretty close to the center there. I could be a little bit off. It might be a little bit farther to the south or a little bit farther to the north, something like that. Now, a little bit earlier today, the hurricane hunters were saying that the center had become elongated, and it was almost a little bit oblong, something like that. It wasn't perfectly round, but then it kind of got round as the day's gone on again. Sometimes when you have that non-circular eye-like features or eyes, that's an indication that the storm is struggling a little bit. It's not perfectly in balance. But basically, you can see it showing up pretty nicely right there. So here we go to the west now, and here are these stronger bands, and this is the area here that we're going to be watching most closely. That would be representative of the eye wall. This is where the strongest winds are going to be, and there's even going to be strong winds on the south side, and where those winds come ashore, of course, that'll be the southern extent of the potential, I would think, for hurricane gust at least, if not hurricane winds. But if we continue this north or west-northwest motion here, you can almost estimate where that's going to go. In fact, let's do that. Let's kind of zoom out here. Now I've got the line extended there so you can see that line. Let me stop it because there's a lot of things going on here. So if that's the forecast track from the Hurricane Center, which is basically like that right there, once again, this is the 10 a.m. forecast track, then if we kind of took the edge of it here and extended that parallel, you can see where we're ending up here. And that's provided that it doesn't do any wobbles. Remember, little wobbles make a big difference for the area right in the path of the storm, but they don't necessarily make a big difference for the overall where the storm is going. So barring any wobbles, it looks like the southern edge of the eye wall probably would come ashore there north of Delray, probably towards or near West Palm Beach. Now, if it wobbles a little bit to the right, then the strongest winds would be to the right of that. If it wobbles a little bit to the left, then the strongest winds would be south of that. So Broward is down here. And you can see Broward's right there. And you can see there's northern Broward. So I think this call of Broward being in the tropical storm warning and the hurricane watch is going to work out very, very well. And Palm Beach County being in the hurricane warning is going to work out very well, as well as Martin and St. Lucie counties there, which looks like where the core of the storm is going to come on through. So we're kind of like, once again, what I said, it kind of baked in the cake. Now it's not expecting any big changes, and we just have to watch it unfold. This is the part where hopefully you folks that were preparing in the path of it in the hurricane warning zone are ready for it, and you're ready for some power outages and some pretty strong winds. Let's go ahead and do that radar tour. Let me back up here a little bit, and we'll kind of start north to south. So there we are in North Florida. The rain band's coming through from south of Jacksonville, St. Augustine through Daytona, all the way down the coast, and just about getting over to the west coast now, through Orlando and on down to the south. And you can see the heavier bands starting to come on shore, Palm Beach County as well, working their way to the south, especially in central and western Broward. We haven't had excessively heavy rain so far, although some of these storms down here to the south and these heavier showers that have been moving through have been producing some brief heavier rainfall, but we haven't had these bigger rain bands coming through. So that's good. Here's the satellite picture, and you can see there it still appears to be struggling a little bit because the center is located right about there. And so look what's happened is that the heaviest thunderstorms now are on the south side of the center. It's that heavier thunderstorm activity is wrapping around the center, but once again, it's not over the center. So there is some shear, there's some unbalanced forces going on here. In fact, let's go ahead and skip on over to the water vapor loop, and that way you can see kind of the dry air, which I think really, the dry air I think really kind of saved us here in far southeast Florida, and in fact for the whole peninsula, as opposed to looking at a strong Category 1, we're looking at probably a very weak, or I'm sorry, not weak, low end Category 1 strong tropical storm. I hate to call any type of hurricane weak because if you get hit by a hurricane, it's not a good deal. So all this teal colored area down here, that's the dry air, and it's wrapping underneath those cirrus clouds, that little whitish area there. So what's going on is we've also got some wind shear coming in here, and remember the circulation's like this, and this reddish area, that's also going into the circulation. So it's helping to disrupt the circulation. The thing about dry air is dry air creates downdrafts, and hurricanes don't like downdrafts. Tropical storms don't like downdrafts. They're all in the center, updrafts, and then it's like in, up, and out is the way that the classic hurricane model works there. So anytime you introduce dry air, you're causing the rain to evaporate, creating cool air, which sinks to the ground, relatively cooler air, and then that creates the downdrafts. There's the position right there, once again, and you can see how it's really, really close to the dry air on the side here. Now, the one thing we have to consider with the dry air is that, I was mentioning the downdrafts, as that dry air continues to be entrained over Nicole as it goes over Florida, the wind gusts are likely to be stronger. And the reason for that is that the wind gusts in a hurricane are typically created by several things. One, the rain squalls coming down on the outer edges of it, and that's pulling down some of this momentum from higher up above the ground where there's no friction. The other thing is that as the wind, which is flowing pretty smoothly over the water, gets over land, it encounters the roughness or the friction of the ground, and it causes the air to become more turbulent. So then you also start to see gustier type of conditions. But now we're adding in a third factor here, and that is that we've got these kind of this drier air that's circulating into the circulation, working its way into the circulation. That's going to be contributing to the downdrafts. So the downdrafts will probably be stronger than we would normally see in a tropical storm or a hurricane over land. And so we're going to see gusts higher than they normally would be. So what does all that mean? So that means that if we're seeing sustained 40-mile-an-hour winds, we may see gusts over 60, maybe 65 miles an hour. And if we're in an area, say in Broward County, where we're seeing, that was the example for Broward County. So in, say, Palm Beach County, where we're seeing 50 to 60 mile an hour winds sustained, especially south of the center, we might see gusts to 80 or 85. So that's kind of a consideration going forward here. This is going to be a gustier tropical storm when it gets here than we usually see. The models, they are, or let me zoom out here real quickly. There you can kind of see the bigger picture. So the models are doing real well now because what's happening is that this high pressure system that has been sitting just to the north here, it's starting to push off to the east. And as it pushes off to the east, that steering flow now is becoming more aligned with a east to west type of motion of the storm. So that's now helping the storm go more west, no more of that southwest motion. And then as that high that's up here gets farther to the east, then Nicole will start to sense more of that northwest motion. And that's just basically because of this dip in the jet stream out here. It's kind of working its way and pushing that high off and giving Nicole the opportunity to move to the north. In fact, you can kind of see it in the models this afternoon. None of the models are going south of west. In fact, if this is due west, none of the models really at this point are going due west. They all have a northerly component to them, and that is very believable. I know a lot of times we talk about the uncertainty when we're looking at a storm, and we're like, well, yeah, but there's uncertainty. The uncertainty is usually the longer time periods away from the center of the storm. But as you get closer and closer to that starting point where the storm is, the storm really isn't going to do something that violates the laws of physics and the laws of the atmosphere. The storm is not, sometimes people I think try to compare it like with a tornado. Well, sometimes you see tornadoes, do this. Well, the storm is a big entity in the flow of the atmosphere, which is fluid, and the storm is being kind of moved along in that. So that's one of the reasons that we know that it's not going to come to Miami-Dade. In fact, the National Hurricane Center is so confident that the tropical storm force winds are not even going to reach Miami-Dade that they discontinued the tropical storm watch for Miami-Dade. In fact, let's take a quick look at let me do the winds first. One more look at the satellite, and then we'll do the winds, and then we'll talk about the watches and warnings. You know what? The advisor is going to be coming in soon, so I need to get a move along here. So here's the visible satellite loop. As soon as it comes up, and you'll see you can see there you can kind of make out some of the higher thunderstorm tops kind of rotating around there. But look at the dry air that's trying to work its way into the circulation on the north and northeast, the northeast and northeast side there. So there's a lot going against strengthening. It may strengthen a little bit. We're 5 miles an hour wind speed wise underneath a hurricane. We could probably get to 5 miles an hour, but it's not going to be 15 or 20 mile an hour increase in intensity based on that presentation there. All right, let's talk about some of the winds. This is out in the western Atlantic here, and you can see this one buoy site that's been blowing all day out of the northeast, 54, 56, 58. Those are the gusts, so blowing pretty good there, definitely tropical storm gusts. Also, just off the coast there, you can see the gusts picking up. There are some gusts up by St. Augustine as well. Off the Cape, 51 miles an hour. There's the track line. We'll keep that into account. And then here we are in South Florida. We've had a gust now of 53 over there on West End on Grand Bahama there. All right, here is the advisory. So you know what? Let's get right to that, and then we will talk about the advisory, the new advisory, and what it has going for it. Okay, it is loading as I speak, and there it is, 4 p.m. So still a tropical storm, not a hurricane. And the thinking would be, of course, there's no plane in there right now. There's no strong indication that it has gotten substantially stronger. So they're holding the intensity at 70 miles an hour, which is tropical storm strength. And remember, we were talking about this number up here a lot, this latitude, which is 26.5. That basically is unchanged, meaning that the storm is not going any farther south. This is our east-west motion here. So it's moving west because that number is increasing, and this number is unchanged, so it's not moving north or south for the moment. Winds at 70 miles an hour. I added this on here. I wish I'd done it a little bit earlier. This is the compass heading. So if you take a compass where 0 is north, 90 is east, 180 is south, and 270 is west, we can get really, really fine resolution, kind of real granular resolution with the heading. So this is due west. It's not slightly south of west. It's not slightly north of west. It's due west, and it's picked up speed a little bit at 13 miles an hour, and the pressure, 985. 55 miles east of Freeport on Grand Bahama Island. This area here, this is the, and this works better over the water, but this yellow area is the tropical storm conditions, and we're seeing the tropical storm conditions along the coast, and they are trying to work their way inland. Let's go ahead and go forward here. So there is the forecast position for just after midnight tonight, and the Hurricane Center has a very pronounced west-northwest, almost northwest motion here. They are forecasting the center to come ashore north of West Palm Beach. So that means that the folks in the hurricane warning area, like we've been talking, from basically Palm Beach, Martin, St. Lucie, Indian River, Volusia on up, through Flagler, the hurricane warning area, you will likely see the brunt of the storm there. Palm Beach, we were kind of splitting Palm Beach, if you remember, in half, saying that southern Palm Beach probably wouldn't be as bad as northern Palm Beach County. I think that is still the case in terms of the winds there. But you can see this little red area there. That's so what happens is that the storm is forecast to become a hurricane just as it's reaching the coast, and so the hurricane wind field, the area with hurricane winds, is going to be relatively small. And that's typically the case too. If you have a 75-mile-an-hour hurricane, the whole inside of the hurricane, the whole eye wall doesn't have 75-mile-an-hour winds. Just one little area in that eye wall has the 75-mile-an-hour winds. So if we base it on this here, we would say that much of Palm Beach County will see winds probably in the 50 to 60-mile-an-hour range. I know there's a hurricane warning in effect, but I think we'll see 50 to 60-mile-an-hour winds with gusts above hurricane strength in Palm Beach County, especially northern Palm Beach County. There probably will be, based on this advisory here, a small area of Martin and St. Lucie counties that will see 70, maybe 75 sustained for just a brief time, and gust maybe to 90. And then that area could extend farther to the north, up maybe as far north as Daytona Beach as well, the stronger wind flow there. But this really is going to be kind of a lopsided storm here in terms of what everybody says they experience. Folks in South Palm Beach, Boca, Delray, all the way down into Deerfield and Broward, Fort Lauderdale might say, yeah, it was windy, but it really wasn't that bad. And folks from North Palm Beach, from Jupiter on up through Stewart, Port St. Lucie, up through Vero Beach, you guys are going to say, wow, that was a bad night, because it was windy and howling, and it was just a bad night. Let me go over quickly here the the changes of the watches and warnings. Well, there are none. So basically we have the same situation here. So at this point, it doesn't serve any purpose to cancel the hurricane watch for Broward. You know what? Just leave it up and don't kind of make these little last minute moves. So the hurricane watch remains in effect for Broward. The tropical storm warning remains in effect for Broward. And let me just confirm that I've got no changes with this advisory, none. So the tropical storm warning remains in effect for Broward. The tropical storm warning is in effect for inland Palm Beach County and Lake Okeechobee. And in fact, you know what? I'll get to that graphic and show it, because there's no changes. I don't have to wait for the graphic to update. Sometimes we have to wait for it to update by the local National Weather Service offices. All right, so there we are at just after midnight tonight. Going forward, there we are tomorrow afternoon at 1 p.m. This is some pretty fast motion here. In fact, it's speeding up as it goes. That's good. We don't want a tropical storm to linger across the state, especially because the ground is still very saturated from central through North Florida from Ian in late September. So we don't want a lot of rain here. In fact, I think the latest rainfall values I saw were a maximum of 6 inches. 6 inches is a lot on top of already saturated grounds, but it's better than 12 inches, right? So 6 inches there. So there we are for Thursday afternoon, and then after that, it's maybe skirting the Big Bend area there, and then there we are Thursday night going into Georgia, weakening from a tropical storm then to a low pressure area, and that's basically it. It's done as a low pressure area. Let me back that up just for a second so we can just take kind of a big look at that. As I always like to say, does it matter if we are in or out of the cone? I hear everybody saying, no, it doesn't matter, Craig. No, it doesn't matter if you're in or out of the cone. It matters if you're in or out of the storm conditions. As you can see, this is a perfect example of at 4 and 5 days, the cone works great because it gives us an idea where a storm is heading. At 3 days, starting to get close, but within 3 days, the cone just really doesn't work to help the message at all. In fact, the cone works against the message. Why does the cone work against the message? Because the cone represents a point, not the storm, and the point is being tracked by two lines here, which look like size. And so people think, well, am I in or out of the cone? It doesn't matter if you're in or out of the cone within 3 days. It matters if you're in or out of the tropical storm conditions. And because this is a very large tropical storm, a lot of those conditions extend well outside of the cone. So, so for all of you who sometimes, and I know all of you watching don't do this, but for those of you who know people who say, well, but now we're out of the cone, just remind them that the cone only tracks a single one-dimensional point. So let's talk about I know I'm done preaching. Everybody's like, oh, Craig, every single time you talk about that, think it's important. So hurricane warnings remain in effect for the Northwest Bahamas. The hurricane warning remains in effect for coastal Palm Beach, all of Martin, all of St. Lucie, all of Indian River and Volusia, on up to Flagler there, Daytona Beach in the hurricane warning. And then north of that, we have tropical storm warnings. So tropical storm warnings for Broward, the west coast, basically from Port Charlotte and Fort Myers up through Tampa Bay, Cedar Key, on over to Apalachicola and Panama City. And the tropical storm warning extends from about St. Augustine north through Jacksonville and up over into Charleston and southeast parts of South Carolina there. There's still one little part of the tropical storm watch in south central Georgia, but you can kind of see how it all shakes out. Just on this southern edge here, because of wobbles, not because of a track shift, is the hurricane watch. That's where it remains in effect. The storm surge values didn't change. 3 to 5 feet is forecast through east central, the Space Coast, up into the northeast coast of Florida, and 3 to 5 feet possible around Cedar Key and along the Big Bend area there in Levy County. The storm surge warning bounded by the storm surge watch there, which does extend up into South Carolina. I know there were evacuation orders that were given. Hopefully folks kind of heeded those orders and got out ahead of that. All right, so let's talk about the timing of where I think the strongest winds are going to be. This is not the hurricane force winds. These are the strongest wind gusts because if we just say hurricane force winds, we're going to be looking at a very small area. So this is like the hurricane force gusts area, and we're going to break it down here. And so this is the area where I think the highest chance for power outages is. And as we're going into the evening now, for those of you especially that are kind of going to be in this red area here as I play it out here, you really want to make sure you have your flashlights ready to go. Another thing is this evening, if you're cooking dinner or you're doing anything like that, make sure you turn off your stove if the power flickers or if the lights flicker or something. Sometimes we have house fires from the power goes out, but somebody was cooking and they had like their knob set on high or something like that. The power went out. They forgot about what they were doing because now the power's out, their stove's off, and then several hours later the power comes back on and the burner comes back on high, and now maybe you're not paying attention, and so there have been house fires from that. So if the power goes off and you have a manual knob on your stove, turn it to the off position. Also, if the power goes off, don't open the refrigerator or freezer anymore. I don't think we're going to be in a long duration power outage anywhere. When I say long duration, I mean more than 12 to 24 hours here. I don't think they're going to be too widespread, but they could be right under this red area. And when I say widespread, just more than like spotty neighborhood power outages, maybe some partial communities with power outages, things like that. So basically, as we go forward here, let me go ahead and advance this because I'm talking. And then also you can see the wind directions here that are in the forecast. So there we are, 9 p.m., and now the strongest winds, gusts, are approaching the coast here. So northeast Palm Beach County, as well as Martin and St. Lucie counties there. And let's go forward into time. And so there we are at 3 a.m. So kind of crisscrossing Palm Beach County here. So the farther south you go, the lower the chances of these very, very strong winds are. And the farther north you go, closer to that red line there, and to the north of it or above it, the stronger those winds are going to be. So this kind of is the area here where I think the highest chance of power outages is. And in fact, I'm going to kind of draw that out there so that when we go forward in time here, we kind of know what's going on. And there you can see it starts to shrink because the forecast for the intensity goes down. So if we draw this area again here, it's kind of shrinking there. It looks like it's south of Orlando, give or take. And then going forward again, and now it's basically gone. So because this is going to be a tropical storm or possibly minimal Category 1 hurricane, it's going to have just an area, probably something like that, of where we're going to see the most power outages and the strongest wind gusts. And then you can see the wind, how it kind of veers around it there like that. So just some of the things to remember as we go through the night tonight. That's kind of it there. You know what? What we'll do is I'm gonna stop the recorded part of this here for those who have joined for just the recorded version.